This video was sponsored by Factor75. This year is a good year for YouTube animation. We finally got a trailer for Hazbin Hotel, which is going to be on TV. And we got the second episode of A Fox in Space, another show full of furries, just like Hazbin Hotel. But the pilot that I was looking forward to seeing the most finally dropped, LACKADAISY, another show full of furries. Yeah, now that I step back and think about it, this is more of a golden age for furries than it is for YouTube animation. But even if you are a furry, this show might have even more pussy than you can handle. By that I mean every single character is a cat. And if you like that cat pun, don't worry, because I got 50 more of them. But before I go any further, I think it's best if I go over the history of this show. LACKADAISY takes place in the 1920s, at the height of Prohibition. And in my opinion, that's a pretty original setting for an animated TV show. But it certainly didn't start off that way. In fact, it started as just a webcomic. From what I've researched of the webcomic, it starts off just okay, but it evolves into something amazing. Not only does the story get better, but the art as well. But the main question I'm certain is on all of your minds is, why the hell are they all cats? At first I thought they were going to replace the alcohol in this series with catnip or something, but I certainly scratched that theory off my list really quickly, because it really doesn't seem like there's any inverse reason as to why they're cats. But after talking to a few fans of the series, apparently they're cats because, well, cats are more expressive than people. Really, the only way to make a human as expressive as a cat is to make them, I don't know, an anime character, and I think we have enough anime webcomics as it is. Now, the very first thing I noticed when I first watched this pilot is just how good the animation is. I've given a lot of praise to Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss, but those look like TV shows. This looks more like a movie. Like, I'm not saying it's Disney quality or anything, but something more on the level of Bob's Burgers the movie or Simpsons the movie. Don't get me wrong, Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss can have really good looking animation at times, but normally it looks kind of, you know, flat like Charlie's chest. Now, while the music in LACKADAISY is serviceable, I still prefer the music in Hell of a Boss and Hazbin Hotel. The opening song didn't grab me in the same way Hazbin Hotel's opening song did, but then again, Hazbin Hotel used a pre-existing song while this is original. And I'm only comparing it to Hazbin Hotel because, let's be honest, it kind of set the standard for crowd-funded pilots on YouTube. The dialogue at the start of the pilot is a bit awkward at times, and it's not a one-to-one recreation of the webcomic. But much like the thing that killed the cat, this pilot got my curiosity. After the Three Stooges get their alcohol, they're attacked by another group of three, and we get a really long action sequence. Something like this would normally be saved for the climax, but this thing goes on for over 10 minutes. That's more than a third of the pilot. And maybe it's just me, but this whole scene made me really want to play Fallout New Vegas again. I don't know, maybe it's the TNT. But the action scene isn't just there for eye candy, because it's used to establish the characters, such as Rocky, the gray cat. Clearly, he's really into theater, and he's a bit of a nut, especially when it comes to explosives. Calvin, the orange cat, who's a bit of a pussy, both figuratively and literally. But once you put a gun in his hands, he becomes just as crazy as Rocky. And he also seems to have a bit of a thing for the black girl cat, Ivory. And it's just the most adorable puppy love I've ever seen. Or I guess in this case, kitty love. And as for her character, she seems to be the straight man of the group. All of them seem to be pretty cartoonishly lucky, and they work pretty well under the threat of death, as if they have 9 lives, just like Puss in Boots. I wonder if death is ever gonna show up in this. In fact, come to think of it, the success of Puss in Boots 2 probably will really help this show out. The most notable henchman who is after them is this black cat by the name of Mordecai. The first thing I thought when I saw him was, damn, Tom from Tom and Jerry really got the drip. He seems to be the best shot out of anyone, and that's probably because he has a gun from the 1960s. Maybe I just don't know my guns as well as I think I do, and a bunch of people are gonna correct me in the comments section.
Actually, how about right now? It's a model 1911. Specifically though, through a quick Google search, depending on when this scene took place, it could have been the model 1911 A1 that this feline felon got his hands on, which was an improved version that entered service in 1926, directly during the Prohibition, which lasted from 1920 to 1933. Thus, maybe at the time, the Model 1911A1 would have been easier to get his hands on. Now, I'm no gun nut, but all I needed to do was do a quick Google search for guns from the 1920s to the 1960s. And this sure doesn't look like a Chinese gun to me. Also, his wiki article even lists a gun in his trivia page. Figured I'd save you the nightmare of being called a gunless virgin by the comments. The more you know. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and don't think I've been missing those cat puns that you've been making. This isn't the last time you'll see me.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This is pretty good, Diana.
Ja, I'm hungry. I want a burger with cheese on it.
I could give Professor Dreadlock a burger with cheese on it, but then he'll ask to get a XXL soda and complain all week about gaining weight.
Jar, I can hear every word you're saying, but there's a healthy alternative to a burger with cheese on it. Factor 75.
Factor 75? I know what that is! It looks like it's time to get in today's sponsor. After all, Factor's meals are updated weekly to include an earth-shattering 27 meals. Factor delivers freshly ready-made meals to your doorstep. And since there's no prep, there's no mess. And since there's no mess, it allows you to fill the rest of your day with things you enjoy, like watching Just the Robot videos. They also have options for vegan, calorie-smart vegans, and keto. And with those 27 meal options per week, there just has to be something for you. You can use my link in the description of this video, or go to GoFactor75.com to get $130 off across 3 boxes. Now that right there is a steal of a deal.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
He also appears to have Asperger's syndrome, not just because of his personality, but because he counts bullets like Archer does. Granted, even if he does have it, he wouldn't be able to get diagnosed, because they didn't know what that was until World War II. At the end of the action scene, he does have a very good chance to take his shot, but for some reason, he doesn't. I was a bit confused at first as to why he didn't. Maybe it was because he didn't want to shoot a woman or something, but the reason is revealed after the credits. I won't spoil it, watch it for yourself. Although you should pay close attention because it goes by so fast you might miss it. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, he's voiced by Sungwon Cho, one of the funniest YouTubers ever. I wonder how that interview went. Hey Sungwon Cho, you're known for being really hilarious. Wanna voice the most monotone character of them all?
Okie dokie.
Now, I ain't no animator. I've never worked in the industry or even tried to animate freelance. But I certainly can tell you this much. Action scenes are the hardest thing to animate. When you have characters just sitting down and talking or walking and talking, you can reuse the same background and you don't have to move the characters around all that much. But with action scenes, the backgrounds are changing all the time, there's a lot of movement involved, and you have to animate a lot of original assets that will probably only be used for this scene. So the fact that they pulled this off, especially for their first episode, is nothing short of amazing. Hell of a Boss never had an action scene this long, and even if they did, their animation doesn't have as much shading as this show does. So our main characters, after catnapping the alcohol, go to a speakeasy. For those of you who don't know your history, 100 years ago, during the time when alcohol was illegal, people would still find ways to purchase it, just like they do with marijuana right now. It was illegalized thanks to the effort of women, and this Ned Flanders-looking motherfucker named Wayne Wheeler. Sounds like the name of a Marvel superhero, I know. And when I say it was illegalized, I don't mean it was just a law. No, no, no. It was the constitutional 18th Amendment. A lot of people thought only hard liquor would become illegal, but no. Even things like sauerkraut became illegal, because it had a higher alcohol count than 0.5%, although back then sauerkraut was called Liberty Cabbage. As to how people got around these laws, well, drinking alcohol wasn't illegal, but selling it was. So hospitals would prescribe people with whiskey, and in this verse I'm assuming vets would prescribe people with whiskey. Sacramental wine was allowed to be given out by churches and synagogues. Almost everybody was becoming a rabbi back then. And of course you had people making their own alcohol with good old-fashioned moonshining. And then the government started adding dangerous chemicals to the things moonshiners were using, interesting. It was considered a conspiracy back then, but it was proven true. But by far the best place to get a drink during Prohibition, and the most well-known, were speakeasies. Eventually Wayne Wheeler decided to make even more strict laws surrounding alcohol, which led to gang violence. And this is more than likely where our story takes place. I wonder how all those people during Prohibition would react to a cartoon like this. Anyways, enough about the history lesson. Let's get back to reviewing Lackadaisy. One thing I really like about this show over Hell of a Boss is how they introduce characters, such as the fat cat Horatio. He gets a brief scene and you already know enough about his character. They could develop him more later on. At least we don't have Alistair going, "Oh, this is nifty, and here's her personality." Like, goddamn, that was an awkward way to introduce her character. By the way, unlike Hell of a Boss and Hazbin Hotel, who have to scream the jokes in your face, a lot of the jokes in this show you probably won't get the first time you watch it. They drive into this construction site with a sign that says Mr. Stables. Rocky drives into the sign with a maniacal look on his face. But in the speakeasy, we meet an upstanding citizen named Wick, who's a business owner. When he hears about the fight that happened, he seems very concerned about the dynamite being used in a construction site, but Rocky tells him that it's owned by Mr. Stables, who's presumably a business rival to him. Wow, a subtle joke that you have to re-watch to get. Vizzy Pop, you should take some notes. Oh, never mind, I continued watching the credits. Apparently Ivory's last name is Mr. Stable. It wasn't a business rival, it was his own place. God, that's way more hilarious. Look at the horrified look on his face. But despite everything Rocky and his team went through, the alcohol clearly has a terrible taste to it, and it doesn't really put the other employees at Lackadaisy in high spirits. But the current owner, Mitzi, is not ready to give up hope. She will do what she can to honor the memory of her ex-husband / former owner of Lackadaisy, Atlas. If only he wasn't murdered. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, there's a murder mystery in this show, which they don't actually mention in this pilot, and I'm sure it must have been very tempting to, but they just didn't. I guess they're saving that reveal for episode 2. When you really get down to it, this pilot was pretty much handled in the complete opposite way of Hazbin Hotel. And honestly, I think that's for the best. I'm happy that they didn't just try to copy the success of Vizzy Pop. Now, the main reason as to why I did this review is so all of you watching this will go check out the pilot for Speakeasy. The indie scene needs as much support as it can get. I'm tired of remakes, reboots, and identity politics and everything I see from a big studio. After all, it ain't easy being perfect.